Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday YouTube channel. I am your host, Ryan Hartley. This channel is for heart-centered leaders just like you. I hope our time spent together helps you leave a heartprint where those around you are left better than yesterday. These interview sessions are sponsored by our great friends at Elevate Online Marketing. On episode 210, it is so great to welcome back Christine Saunders. Christine is a great friend of our community. She is the founder of Wholehearted Life, and she originally joined us back on episode 13 in September 2018. It's been a long time. I'm so glad to bring Christine's heart and mind back to the podcast. Christine's mission is to partner with you to unlock your potential and break down barriers so that you can live a wholehearted life. Her goal is to provide you proven strategies and help you navigate around the fear that paralyzes you and the majority of society from following your passion, taking risks, and being blissfully happy. I hope that you enjoy our conversation. It is Christine Saunders on episode 210. Christine Saunders, welcome back to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to be here.
The challenge I've got is to make this a podcast where people that are going to be tuning in and can actually listen to it. It's not just two people having a nice chat and a catch up. I've got to some way create the environment for other people to benefit from this conversation too.
Absolutely.
You joined us episode 13 back in September 2018. That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's been a long time. I can't believe it's been that long.
Right. Yeah. What's that? 4.5 years?
Something like that. What episode are you on now?
So 207 has gone out today as we record this. So
Wow.
this will be like 210.
That is awesome. That is so great. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. People ask the secret was that I just haven't. I started and haven't stopped. It's just that stubbornness of continue. Like there's no secret to it. I just haven't stopped.
Right. For sure.
The universe keeps sending good people my way, so I just have to interview them.
There you go. Right. That's how it works.
The angle that we kind of took when we spoke like last time, the Wholehearted Life was something front and center of your activities, but I just want to take a moment to like honor you and admire how you've shown up like for the last 3 years. The world has been through at least one crisis. Unfortunately, your community has been through several.
Mm-hmm.
And what many people might not know is that beyond your role as a coach, your actual day job is in disaster management.
It is disaster management and operations.
And one of the things that I've been saying during the pandemic is that you don't prepare to be a leader during the crisis. You prepare before the crisis, and then the leader shows up during the crisis. And you, my friend, have shown up. You and your colleagues have absolutely shown up during these times. I'd love to kind of make a little bit of space and time for that, if you don't mind today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I don't know what you'd like to know, but I am an open book, as you know.
I do know that. And I highly encourage people to go and check out episode 13 back in 2018, just so you can hear a bit of Chris's backstory and routings. But tell us a little bit about your role at in Boulder County. So what you from just outside of Boulder in Colorado. Tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah, so my role with Boulder County government is with Boulder County Housing and Human Services. And within that role, I am the director of operations, and that encompasses a disaster management element for the human service side of disasters. So it's the human side of disasters. We're very well trained on the tactical side, the first response piece. Where we get to shine is in that personal human side of a disaster. So we're in charge of mass care and sheltering, along with volunteer management. And then on top of that, we also do mass casualty incidences where we set up like a family reunification center and then a notification center. And so that's our job. And unfortunately, we did have one of those in the last 3 years. as well as multiple disasters and
Mm.
things that we've worked through. So that's my role. It's a huge role outside of the operations. I also am in charge of site-based safety and security for our buildings, and then project management, space utilization, anything that falls under other duties as assigned is really sort of my catch-all.
Yeah, give us some understanding of timelines. I mean, I remember when there was a time when I was at the local police force in Wiltshire, and we went through a couple of mass like media. There was obviously the huge beast from the east kind of storm, which put the whole force on the ground, and then they went into this thing around the Salisbury poisonings. I don't know how much you saw around the coverage of that with Russia and Novichok and that. And just almost seemed to go back to back to back with crises, one thing to another. And I think the one great thing about public service, public sector, just somehow keep going. I don't know where they get their strength from. And I think you know your colleagues have been the same, serving your hearts out. Give us an idea of the kind of timeline with some of these events that have gone on over the last 3 years.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it has been that back-to-back episode. So just in the last 3 years, we had a mass casualty incident in one of our
Mm,
supermarkets, which was
mm,
quite impactful.
yeah.
We sort of had a plan. It was kind of half baked,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we flew by the seat of our pants, and ultimately was a very successful response. The actual tragedy, of course, is still very impactful for the community.
Mm,
But our role in that was kind of short, is about day and a half.
mhm,
And then it turns into a recovery. So there's
mhm,
a response phase and then there's a recovery phase. And myself and my colleagues are the response phase. We're not part of the recovery, even though we
mm,
dabble our little toes in that
mhm, mhm,
sometimes. And then just a year later, we had a massive, well, started out as a wildfire, grassland
mhm,
fire that ultimately spread to a very concentrated housing urban area. And we lost over 900 homes, lots of buildings,
mm,
lots of businesses. And so that was a huge lift. As far as the response for that, that that was a huge response in evacuations, shelters. We ran a shelter with our local Red Cross for almost 2 weeks, which is unheard of
mm,
for that type of response. And then we opened a disaster assistance center for upwards of 3 months with our FEMA partners, and that was a big, big deal. And shortly after that, we've had a couple of wildfires, and then just uh, this last month, December, we had a fire in our foothills, which is right outside my door, that I went in to do response for to try and figure out evacuation sites and sheltering,
mm,
and got that under control, closed our shelter. Less than 24 hours later, I was on planning for a warming shelter, which, if anybody knows, we had a very generational freezing storm, negative 30 degrees
wow.
for a couple of days. And so we decided as a community that we would open a warming shelter,
Mhm,
um, to specifically open up to the community who needed
mhm,
someplace warm to be. And a lot of that was a lot of our unhoused population,
yeah, yeah.
which was a we just had our after action review, and it was very successful. Our
Mhm,
mission was to save lives, and we saved lives. That night we had people out in vans going to remote locations known where people are sleeping in tents without proper gear. And so that was a big lift all over the holidays. They
and
always happen over the holidays.
yeah, yeah, you can't plan for these things, can you? No matter how much you might do disaster planning, there's nothing quite like the real life scenario. And I
Right.
just think it's ironic, isn't it? Out of all those crises and disasters, you haven't mentioned the one big global thing that went on in the last couple of years. You have had that to deal with too, right?
Yeah, I did all the operations for our COVID response, which
Yeah.
was a 2-ish year type of situation here. And I actually was doing the operations for the COVID response when the Marshall Fire the large urban fire hit, and I had to bow out of the COVID response just because I just did not have the capability and the time to do both.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a little gap in that piece, but I still, to this day, I'm proud of the work I did for the COVID response. It just
Yeah.
was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think we're all at the point where we're like, if we hear the C word one more time, we might just poke our eyes out.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what I found really impactful was reading your LinkedIn article back in March 2021 when you were talking about the impact on you and the community of this mass shooting.
Hmm.
Or I assumed it. Maybe I've assumed it was a shooting, but it was a mass fatality.
Yep, it was a mass fatality, and it was something that you can plan for, you can train to, but
Yeah.
it will never be like you imagine it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you cannot really comprehend until you're actually there. And I hope no one ever has to be there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's, Boulder is pretty close knit community. It's a college town. And
Mm.
so I think the idea from the city and the county was it won't happen here. It
Sure.
can't happen here. And when it did, it did. And
Mm.
we lost 10 lives that day unnecessarily. I mean, it was just ugly and disgusting.
You're a wholehearted human being. You lead with your heart, and I imagine it hits differently when it's not a natural disaster, but one of human disaster. Like what
Absolutely.
are the
Because
differences?
you can't, you, it's like natural disasters are going to happen.
Yeah.
Floods, fires, tornadoes, earthquakes, they're going to happen. And we know what to do. We know how to handle that
Mhm.
as a community, as a response community. What we get into is when you have that human factor and you
Yeah.
just cannot understand the why.
Mm.
And you and I've talked about the why a lot of times
Mhm,
about a
mhm,
lot of things, but
mhm.
understanding the why in that
Yeah.
situation, you can't grasp it, you can't comprehend it.
Mm.
And that's the sad part. Like I did my thing. I showed up and I responded, and I was a mess for
Mm.
days after that. Because I couldn't understand the why. And I still don't understand the why. And
Mm.
even a year later, when I was giving a presentation about that tragedy at an emergency management conference, I was prepared. It's been a year. I'm not going to get emotional. That's not going to happen. And like that trauma, as we
Mm.
know, trauma is not linear. It just
Right.
hit me when I'm standing up there talking to, 50, 60, 70 people. And it just hit me. And I looked at my partner and I said, I'm going to need a minute. Like I
Yeah.
have to like sort of sit with this for a minute.
Mm.
And the audience was really awesome. Didn't know there was a lot of sort of bigwigs in the
Mhm,
audience. So I
mhm.
was a little bit, oh, but it was very authentic and it was very
Sure.
real. And I wasn't sorry that that had happened
Yeah.
because it was really about, was talking about creating a space for
Mm.
people who've lost loved ones, who don't know they've lost loved ones,
Mm.
and picking a spot, picking a venue that is, to scale.
Mm.
They picked a CU, Colorado University Event Center, which is like a coliseum,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
there were ten people lost,
Mm.
and the families were showing up. It was very cold, it was very big, and it just at that moment just hit me like, can you imagine what those families felt like in that environment and how
Mm.
much different it could have been if we were very thoughtful about where we picked? And it was just really overwhelming when that
Mm.
that sort of hit when I was up there talking about it.
Hey, my friends, thank you for being with us so far. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know about our signature Heartprint coaching. Our Heartprint coaching is for you if you're ready to go all in on becoming a heart-centered leader, ready to go all in on doing more of what you love, ready to see what you are capable of with support, guidance, and accountability. You're ready to go on a rapid, transformational journey that will change your life and others in as little as 3 months. Are you ready to show up with courage and share your gift with the world? Ready to start making an income and more impact by doing what you love. Ready to start leaving your legacy where those around you are left better than yesterday. In our Heartprint signature coaching, in our time together, I'll help you lead from your heart set. I'll help you develop other people and your team. I'll help you bring your heart work to the world. I'll help you start leaving a legacy and capturing examples of your impact. I will help you be someone you love, to do more of what you love, and to serve people that you love. It's an amazing opportunity for someone who's ready to go all in and be a heart-centered leader. I'll throw in loads of other bonuses, including your life languages profile, access to our Master Heart and Mind membership, and even some Always Better Than Yesterday merchandise. Head to abty.co.uk/coaching to find out more, and I look forward to connecting with you very soon. That's abty.co.uk.
Yeah, and I guess in kind of your role as the Friends and Relatives Centre, I guess the reunification is obviously the ideal outcome, but for people on that day, they weren't going to be reunified, and I know enough about you that you see hearts, you see souls, you see faces, and yeah, I can only imagine how tough that was to be. But I also understand from the article that you wrote is that, you know, in being part of that trauma, it's brought up trauma of yourself, and then it sounds like from the way you've written that there was an inner battle that says, who am I to feel this way? I haven't lost anyone, but you're dealing with the physical sensation of trauma, and yet the mind is going, suck it up, like this, you know, who are you to feel like this? And it's just like, talk to us about that dichotomy, that wrestling that you had to go through.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I'm an empath. Like
Yeah.
I have no choice in the matter. I will walk by someone and I will feel an energy shift, and I will feel, I know when something is not right. And in that moment, like I put on a hat and I had a job to do, and it's not that I was cold, it's not that I didn't care.
Yeah.
I just knew that if I really stepped out of that role, I wouldn't be able to support the mission. And so it became sort of mission critical. It was probably like a 15-hour, I showed up for like 15 hours with folks. And the part that's really like enlightening for that was there was a gentleman who like there were like 4 or 5 of us there, and we knew that these families were gone. Family members were gone. And that was not our job to say, I'm so sorry you've lost a family member. That was, you know, our coroners and our sheriff's department and police. And so we were there just to hold that space for people. And watching them all go into a room with these officials saying, can't tell you yet. I can't really tell you yet, but I'm suspecting that your family member is no longer with us. And then having people come out and, you know, just watching them and having that empathy for them and just showing up for them, being there, whatever they needed in that moment is what we did for them. And I knew that if I didn't just sort of check myself a little bit, I would have been even more of a mess, and it would have been awful for them. And the thing that just really stuck out for me was there was a gentleman who I knew his wife had passed away. And he came up, and I think he knew as well. And he came up to me and he asked me, what do you need? How are you? And I was like, I had to go, like, I had to blink back my emotions. And I, you know, I don't even remember what I said to him. I think I just put my hand on him and I said, today is a very impactful day. I am fine. What do you need? And then he said, I'm good. And he left. And, you know, later that next morning, like I knew his name. We had the official list. I saw his wife's name. And that's when I was done. I lost it. That's when I could release that emotion. But I don't have a choice.
Mm,
I just, I am that, and I have a love-hate relationship with being an
mm,
empath.
mm,
Um, but it was a struggle for sure,
mm.
absolutely, to be able to just sort of be present because I know that they were so hurting, so,
Yeah.
so, so bad.
Yeah. I think it's about that time when I remember being downstairs in the kitchen. I was like, "Oh, Christine's calling." I was like, "Oh, amazing!" Like, and then I just answered, and it's like, "Oh, Christine's not okay." And then took the conversation out of the kitchen. But yeah, just can only imagine. And it's like you say, there's that perspective that says that you're not going through it, but you are going through it in a very different way. And and I think the cliche question is, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know how you got through it. And I think by the sounds of it, like you didn't have a choice. Like it's not like you
Mhm.
say you had it all together. It's not like, and I guess that's the reality of a crisis, a disaster. It's not normal. It's not natural. There's going to be emotion and trauma, and the
Yep.
reality is, how long did that take for you to slowly come back to your senses, back into your heart, your mind, and your body being in one place?
Well, I mean, days for
Yeah.
sure. It was probably a good week of just
Mm,
daily emotions, tears, talking to people, having that outlet. And I think I mean, like I said, like a year later, I'm having a conversation about it and it just pops up
mm,
because I believe that, like I said earlier, trauma is not linear.
mm,
I may experience something 5 years from now, and that visual will come in my head, and I will have to be, oh, where's this coming from?
mm.
Sort of unpack that for myself at that point.
Yeah. And your good husband John, I imagine it's like, I want to help. Like, how do I help? Like, and just not knowing. And what was the best thing that he could have done for you at that time, or what was the best thing he did do for you at that time?
I think, for him, I think he relies on me to ask for what I need,
Hmm. Hmm.
which I appreciate
Hmm.
because I think there's a lot of times when you have a significant other or a friend who they're feeling so lost that they themselves are like, I'm going to overhelp, I'm going to overdo something.
Right.
And sometimes it can make you feel, for me, like if I'm just like saying something, like when I called you, like I wasn't
Yeah.
looking for you to fix
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to be heard. I
Yeah.
just wanted to get it out. And so I think, for him, that's what he did, and that's
Mm,
that's great, and there was no like, "Hey, you should do this, you should do that," which sometimes happens, and I think
mm,
when that happens for people, for me, it makes me feel like, "Oh, well, I'm not good enough to figure this out on my own, so I have to have somebody
mhm,
tell me," which isn't the case,
mm, mm,
but I think having that relationship up front and knowing, like, what my needs are and having him say, "Hey, how can I show up for you?"
mm.
That was great. That was absolutely great, but I did lean on a lot of colleagues and a lot of people in the field that understand it a little bit more,
Yeah.
and I still do that with every disaster, with every event that we do, with every thing. It's like it's that community that we have amongst our first responders and our incident managers and emergency managers and disaster
Mm.
managers, because we all kind of understand it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think characterizes the community of Boulder County?
Say more. What do you mean?
What do you think, if Boulder County, well, it's a living entity, it's the hearts and the souls, the heartbeats of the residents, the people that work there, the people that serve there. Like, coming, sometimes tragedy brings people together. Like, how did your community respond? How did it reveal itself to you? Like, what sort of things would you say of the people of Boulder County?
Yeah, I for that particular event, it was definitely a coming together. I
Mm,
think, in the response phase, it was a lot of people, you know,
mm.
tons of different community partners came together, almost to the point where it was a little overwhelming for
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And I think the recovery piece is where it really gets into the, what am I sort of entitled to as a victim? And I think we have to, as a community, understand what being a victim of a mass fatality, a mass casualty event. It's a large population. Yes, you have the families of the families and friends that were impacted that had passed away.
Mm,
Then you also have a community who's watching this, who's also traumatized. And
mm,
so what does being a victim mean? How do we
mm,
wrap ourselves around this whole community in order to support this? It was in a supermarket, so it was in a neighborhood, well-established neighborhood. People have lived there for a very, very long time. They go there and now they're like, well, I can't go there. And like, holy crap, this happened like a block from me. Like, how do you support that side
mm.
of being a survivor or a victim, whichever you choose? I like survivor, but
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah.
those sorts of things. So definitely people showed up. We do a lot of work with our community foundation that raises money for these types of things. And then just the first responders were awesome. And a couple of
Mm.
weeks later, they did a event for the first responders, including myself, which was really cool to see and also a little bit re-traumatizing, if you can
Right.
imagine, because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
had it in the very same place where we had the
Sure.
reunification center. So I
Mm,
think, yeah, that it's definitely a tight knit community, even though it is a
mm,
college town.
yeah. Your people that have listened to the first time that you were on, they'll know that your why is all about easing suffering.
Hmm.
Like, does this role that you're in, like, does it help you be full of purpose, or does it leave you with despair? Like,
No despair. I think,
yeah.
that was the one thing I was thinking about in preparing for our conversation
Mm,
was that big shift from, focusing in on coaching
mhm,
and doing workshops and that sort of stuff to what is meaningful for me.
yeah.
Like what is my purpose now? And
Mhm,
my purpose still is to ease suffering for anyone I can whenever I can.
yeah.
And this is a way that I can do that, and like it feeds my soul. So it
Mhm,
doesn't necessarily make me, I mean, yes, I have moments of sadness and
yeah.
moments of things I have to process and get through and work through and understand and figure out. And then there's the tactical side, but it's really the human side. And
Mm,
so if I can set up protocols and processes within our structure that make these types of events less stressful and
mhm,
less impactful for the community that it's happening in, that feeds my soul, that feeds
mhm,
my purpose. And so much so that I volunteer for, Team Rubicon, which is a disaster response group, which is like they've been a community partner forever, been a partner. And so now I am with them. So it's like, I feel like, and I think I just made a post about this not too long ago. It's like a career versus work
yeah.
and versus what drives you. And, when we were younger, my generation is like your parents said, get a career, get a skill set, stay with the same place for, 50 years. And so that was sort of my mindset. And then recently it's like, no, I want to learn new things. I want
Mhm,
to grow, which means then my career and my job and what I do every day changes as it should,
mm,
because then I'd be stuck if I didn't do that. Not that I'm
yeah.
not passionate about my coaching and doing my private practice, because I am.
Yeah.
I do both. It's not the end all be all. You know what I mean?
You have the freedom to express yourself, whatever's right for you in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm. You've had a you've had a right odd time of it. You had a heart surgery as well in the last couple of years. Is that right?
Yep. Unfortunately, I have to have another one in a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I had some heart stuff, some medical stuff, and I unfortunately lost my mother in September of last year, which
Yeah.
was something I also was never prepared for, even though
Yeah, bless
in
her.
the larger picture of things. The piece about easing suffering, she was in a lot of pain,
Yeah.
and so in the end I was very grateful that
Mhm.
she was no longer in pain. Didn't mean I didn't miss her
Mm.
um, at all. I still do, and I
Mhm.
think for me it's knowing that I showed up
Yeah,
for
yeah,
her for
yeah,
years to help her, and I have no regrets.
yeah,
And that's what life is about, living
yeah.
your life and showing up with no regrets. And
Mm.
that's one piece that I don't have. Um,
Mm. Mm.
so that is still like a process. I'm still processing through
Of
that. And I still
course.
have my moments of like sadness. And, I just had
Yeah,
a birthday and
yeah.
things like the firsts, right? Holidays. I think, this last Christmas, I was dealing with the warming shelter and the fire, which
Mm.
was a distraction. And ultimately, I think it was probably a good thing for me. Um, with my birthday, we went out as a family, and my dad gave me a card, and it said
Mm.
for my daughter instead of our daughter.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was not ready for that.
yeah, yeah.
So
Oh,
it hit me pretty hard, and um, yeah, I shed some tears, and there's been moments when I've done that, and I went to Florida to respond to Hurricane Ian like 5 weeks after she had passed because I just needed something for my soul. I
yeah.
just needed something, and I had a huge, profoundly impactful experience there in dealing with that piece,
Mhm.
which I can share if we have time, but
Mhm.
if we don't, that's okay too. Um, but I think being in service of others for me, service over self will always be my motto as
Mm.
because it fits in with the easing suffering. Because if I'm
Mm.
doing service over myself, all my needs are met.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And Mama's name?
Sharon
Sharon.
with
Sharon and
two
a Jim,
R's.
isn't it? Sharon
Yep.
and Jim.
Yep.
Bless him. I've seen many, many photos over the years.
Yeah. Very sweet.
Oh, bless her. And how's he doing? Is he okay?
Dad's good.
Good.
I think, the first, like everything, is going to
Yeah.
be a challenge. And my brother and I and family, we just sort of wrapped ourselves around each other, and it's okay. It's okay because
Mm.
we're easing our own suffering and each other's suffering at that point.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, I've always wanted to come over and have it was the Sunday afternoons with your husband cooking his chicken on the barbecue and the old fashions. Like, I'm like, come on, I need to sit on the porch and have an old fashioned with these guys.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, one day.
Yep.
I keep saying to Abby, we just need to get an RV and just do an Always Better Than Yesterday tour from the East Coast to the West Coast. And
Heck yeah.
yeah, maybe we'll stop off in Colorado for a few weeks at a time.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. That would be
So,
awesome.
so what'd you get up to in Florida?
So, in Florida, Team Rubicon is a veteran owned nonprofit, and
Mhm.
they have veterans and what they call kick-ass civilians, which that's because I'm not a
Clearly yourself, yeah, yeah.
and so I've always wanted to join them. I just never really had the time or any of those sorts of things. So there was a big flood in Montana, which is a couple states north of us, if people don't know, and I really wanted to go and serve. So I joined, and that's when my mother got very sick, and I
Yeah.
wasn't able to go. And after she had passed, I was like, the hurricane happened in Florida, which is like 850,000 people, like huge, like pretty much half of Florida was like
Mm.
wiped out. And they said, hey, anybody want to serve? And I was like, I'm just going to sign up and see what happens. Because normally it's like your first time you sign up, they don't really say, let's go. And I got a message that said, pack your bags, you're going. I was like, what? So, I mean, a lot of people don't know that I don't really travel very often, let
Yeah,
alone
yeah,
for
yeah.
myself. So, that was a huge thing for me
Yeah.
be, brave enough to step into that space and travel by myself and go to places that I've never been. And I
Yeah.
showed up and, sitting in the Tampa airport waiting for my ride, who I had no idea who it was, and then getting in a van and going, 3 mile or 3 hours south to
Mm.
Fort Myers, and staying in an American Legion space on a army cot for like a week. I was like, what have I done? Like, I knew that was going to be there, but one of the jokes was, I was like, I think I might be more of a princess than I thought, just because, wow, how can I do this?
Yeah,
But I did. And, our job was to go out and help people who couldn't get in their homes, things over their homes, trees, just clean up properties of people that, had egress issues that couldn't quite get there. And then we would take all the stuff and debris and carry it to the curb so then it could come picked up and go off. Just
Mm.
trying to help people do that piece. And the profound experience was, everyone knew that I had lost my mom.
Mm.
And I was doing what they call swamping, which means carrying all the logs from the trees that people have sawed down or had fallen down and taken it to the curb. That was my job.
Mhm.
And the earlier in the week, they wanted me to do things like take this car to get the windshield fixed. I was like, I didn't come down here to like drive around, like put me in, like give me the dirtiest job. So they gave me that job. And the lead of that group, were it was 100% humidity, 95 degrees. I'm not used to that. Like, we were all sweaty, we were all gross, but it was awesome. And he stopped me and he said, "Hey, Saunders, is it everything you wanted it to be?" And I said, "Yeah, and more." And then it just hit me. Like, it just hit me and I just started sobbing. I
Mm.
hadn't cried since the day my mother passed
Mhm.
away.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, I'm not gonna, put too much weight on that, but I didn't cry, I didn't have that process, and I started sobbing, and I could not stop. My
Mm.
nose was running, my eyes were running, I was sweaty, and, finally, about an hour into that, he kinda stopped me, he's like, "I know that you're okay, but I really just wanna check to see if you're okay." And can I cuss on here, or do you want me
Yeah,
not
go
to?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Real talk.
I should have asked you that before, but he said, "Good," and I said, "My mom would be so fucking proud of me right now."
Yeah.
And he looked at me and then he started tearing up and he's like, don't you do." But it was just like she was there with me and it
Yeah.
was just so what I needed for my
Mm.
heart and my soul
Mm.
to give back to others in the name of my mom, because she would be so proud of me for going down there and doing that. And I have made friends for life. I will do it again and again and again. It's just so empowering to be able to
Mm.
do that.
You obviously know I had Matthew McConaughey on, and in that Dazed and Confused film, he obviously has a scene where it's not long after he's lost his own father, and he told me about a time where the producer or the director had said to him, like, your dad's still there, like if you want to speak to him, pick up the phone and call him, sort of thing. Like, it's almost like this idea that the spirit of them continues to live on. And and I really like that idea that we can engage with them now. We can engage with them in the present, because we could just say, what would mama do? Or you look at yourself and you're the embodiment of some of those values that she held dear to herself.
Absolutely. And I think for me, it's in those moments when I'm just sitting by myself and I hear a song or I see an image
Mm.
or like I smell something.
Mhm.
And it's not like, oh, that reminds me of my mom. For me, it's like, oh, mama's here. Like, just listening to, John and I were in a restaurant on vacation and John Denver came on. Mama
Mm.
loved John Denver. And then the next one was Neil Diamond. Neil Diamond was one of her favorites. I was like, oh my gosh,
Mama's on the
she is
jukebox.
here. She is here with us. And so, yeah, it is. I feel her, and I'm aware of her. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For people that haven't listened to the first one and they haven't clued up on what you've said so far, what is important to you? Like, what are some of the values that you hold dear to your heart?
Well, service over self is one of them. I feel like that is that contribution to something greater than
Yeah.
myself really helps me to get all my needs met.
Hmm.
Um, I am about being authentic. I'm
Hmm.
about being imperfectly perfect. I'm about sharing your story. I
Yeah.
still 100% believe and still do and advocate for everyone has that story,
Yeah.
and everyone's story matters.
Yeah.
And so if I can help someone share their story and it's healing for them, I know
Mm.
it will be healing for others. And
Mm.
so I still advocate for that piece. Speak your truth. Even when you don't have the words, that's when you got to speak louder. Like, just share and do, because it's empowering you and it's empowering someone else. um,
Mm.
and then of course, I just had this conversation just not 2 hours ago, but I still believe that everything, it begins and ends with love. If
Mm.
you don't have love for what you do, you don't have love for yourself, you don't have love for your community, it's a challenge sometimes. So
Mm.
understanding that love isn't scary, that's
Mm.
what I'm trying to get apart for people. Like, it is not scary. Love is not scary. It's just your meaning. So you get to choose what that meaning is for yourself.
I think people find the absence of love scary, even though they might not be able to find the words for it. You know, that, and it's that fear of either losing it or the fear of being rejected from it. I think it's that people really fear, and in
Mm.
doing so, aren't able then to engage in the possibility of love.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's that human instinct. Like, I have to protect myself. So I'm going to put up a wall. I'm going to say that love is horrible. I'm going to say that the reason that love is horrible is because I got hurt 25 years ago, and I'm not going to even unpack any of that stuff. And if we can get people to a place where let's just have conversations about it. What does it feel like? What does it look like? How do you act? Like, love is not all romantic. It's just love. It's a feeling. It's an energy. It's not necessarily a romantic connection with someone.
Yeah,
Of course that's there, but it's really just that energy that
yeah.
you have when you love something. Or yeah.
Well, the good book talks about how I love Bob Goff's interpretation of love does.
Hmm.
Love is a verb, love is action, and the good book, and obviously Jesus talks about how the greatest gift we can have is to lay down our life for the ones that we love. And fortunately, we live in a world where we don't have to literally lay down our lives. But what you're saying is service, and I think service is love. The willingness to serve someone else's needs.
Yep.
How do we make sure that stays healthy, and that I'm serving from a place of willfulness and wholeness? And I love what you say around that 100, because so
Hmm.
many people serve from an empty cup, and things go wrong when they don't get that back in return.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, like, the 100 piece is, it's not 50-50. I've said this for years. It's
Mhm.
100-100. And if you like, I think about it in a space of resiliency,
Yeah.
and um like, you have to have love for yourself, number one. I
Mhm.
mean, that sounds sort of, put your mask on in the airplane,
Yeah,
charge your
yeah,
phone, like, but you have to have that love for yourself. If you can't be open enough to be okay with your imperfections or your flaws and love yourself anyway,
yeah,
it's harder to then love others. And with the resiliency piece, it's like, yeah, there are days when I don't want people to go, man, you're so awesome because you're resilient, you keep going. And like, I just had somebody say to me, like, you got knocked down, you kept going, you kept going. And that's awesome. Like, no, no, it's not. Like,
yeah, yeah.
I don't want hard. I want easy. I want
Mhm.
peace. I want calm. But it's also recognizing that resiliency piece, is about the love that you have for yourself and the boundaries that you put around what you can and you can't do, and being able to say no, which is very, very hard for me. And I've
Mm,
been doing a lot of work around that. It's okay to say no.
mhm,
It's okay to say no and not have to explain yourself.
mm.
So it's yeah, you have to have love for yourself in order to be resilient. So
Hmm. Did you have a good birthday?
I did. I had a great birthday. I got to, I mean, like I said, with the whole birthday card thing, that was a little, wasn't expecting that. And so on my actual birthday, I worked out because I have to do some, take care of my body. And I went home and I just had this calling to just go to the mountains. And the reason that I go to the mountains is because I feel closer to God. I wanted to
Yeah.
talk to my mom. I wanted to just have peace. It was snowing. It was beautiful. I was the only person there. The creek was
Mm.
running. Um, I didn't spend a whole lot of time there just because it was cold and snowing and I didn't know how long it was going to snow and I didn't want to get stuck. And then I spent the day by myself,
Mm.
um, which is typically something that's very uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
And so I knew that if I wanted to be at peace, I would just have to sit with being uncomfortable and figure out why. And I didn't really have any uncomfortable. I read, I did what I wanted, I talked to who I wanted to.
Mm.
So it was a really nice birthday. And then we went out to dinner. It was great.
Mm.
I get birthday week though.
You really are a princess.
I am a princess.
You had any new tattoos recently?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a one on my ribs that's a woman being lifted out of wherever
Yeah.
with like flames and gorgeous like flowy stuff, just like rising up from darkness. So
Mm. Is that symbolic of someone in particular?
not necessarily someone, but maybe myself. Like I feel like there's been, I had pretty, you know, dark times,
Mhm.
like before you and I even kind of connected
Mhm.
and I started
Mhm.
working through all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
it's still a process. I
Mhm.
feel like you know, trying to figure out where I'm going, where I am, where I'm going, what I want to do. Um, I just really felt like I had a lot of experiences over the last 5, 6 years where I learned a lot about
Mm.
myself. I learned a lot about my community. And I came from a dark place into this very empowering light. And
Mm.
I wanted to embrace that piece. For me, that was it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I don't go back to those every once in a while. And I also have strategies to figure out, oh, that's what's happening. That's what it feels like. Now I need to figure out
Mm.
how to get out of
Mm.
that. Because you and I know that I wallowed in my own misery for like 25 years. So I don't want to ever go back there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it scares me when I allow myself to do that for a little bit of time. So I'm very much aware of
There's no such thing as there's no way you could go back. It's not possible because you are who you are now. But the thing I keep seeing time and time and time again is that the depths that you can meet yourself is directly proportionate to now the depths that you can meet other people.
that. Hmm.
And I think sometimes the most hurt people on this planet end up becoming the most compassionate because they've met themselves in that darkness. They're more able, they have more, it's almost like leveling up, upgrading, being able to see a spectrum of humanity that you can't otherwise relate to. And
Hmm.
that's only made possible by embracing the void, the darkness, the shadow. So there's always purpose in the pain.
Absolutely. And I think the last time I was on with you, or one of the times that we've had a
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
was, now I lost my train of thought, but it's It's taking what you've learned from the dark
Yeah.
and understanding it, understanding the why, and finding the good
Mm,
in every situation.
mm,
And, not that every situation that's happened to or for me, because there's a
sure.
little bit of difference, it wasn't good, wasn't
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
something good came out of it,
Yeah.
because if I wasn't able to experience the things in life that I experience,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be me today. I would
Yeah.
not be the person I am today, and understanding who I am and what I want to do and who I want to be and how I want to
Mm.
show up.
And that attaching meaning is so subjective that it can do one or two things. You can be trapped to that attachment and the meaning, or you can be empowered by it. And I guess that's what you mean by find the good, isn't it? It might not necessarily be good by nature, but it serves a purpose. And it,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. And if you can find, like, I believe, I mean, and you may not know right then and there. And sometimes that's the frustrating part. Like, I don't understand why this is happening. And I
hmm,
used to say, I don't understand why this is happening to me.
hmm,
And I've shifted that. I've put a meaning to it. It's like, why is this happening for me? What is the opportunity? Where is the lesson? What am I getting? What is the universe saying to me?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And until you understand what you're getting, it's going to keep happening over and over and over again
Yeah.
until you dig deep enough and unpack shit.
One of my guests a couple of weeks ago, she said this. She says everybody's running around doing personal development in the light, and actually growth occurs in the dark. And
I
it's
agree.
just one of those stark reminders to go, do you know what? If it ain't for your challenges, you're not growing.
Right. Right. If it's easy, like I said, I wanted easy, I wanted calm.
Yeah,
And that's nice.
yeah.
And you're right.
It is after 3
Change.
years of crises back to back to back to back, right?
Right.
Someone's
Right.
got to rest.
Yeah. And that's another, thing I need to work on, is like
Yeah,
putting up that time for me to just sort of rest,
yeah,
because I have this energy about me that's like, I'm not doing enough. Like, that
yeah.
was one thing that kind of happened. I think it was last summer. I had gone to like a memorial thing for fallen veterans and
Mhm, mhm.
heroes, and like their mission was going around the country to, give people an insight of what this is like, and like, let's prevent some
Yeah,
suicides for veterans. It's a very big number that's happening. And I left and I volunteered to sort of be like a person, that's me, to be a person that sort of follows people around and asks, answers questions about this particular, display. And I left there and I said to myself, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more.
mhm,
And I don't know why that came to me, but it did. And that's when I decided, like, I'm gonna join Team Rubicon, and I'm
mhm,
gonna do all these challenges for Stop Soldier Suicide, and I'm gonna be out there and be an
mhm,
advocate. And I have to be careful, because sometimes you get a
mhm.
little bit too into it and it just encompasses you. But I
Yeah.
was like, I need to do more. And I just had this overwhelming feeling of I need to do more. And I don't know why. And I mean, it's all good, but
Which
at
is
the
great,
moment,
which is great accountability, isn't it? If you can do more, do more. Like that is a wonderful, you know, and it's a paradox. There's a fine line of walking that paradox because is it under the illusion of lack or is it through the overflow? And if you've
right?
got more capacity, if you've got more capability, great. You've just held yourself accountable to a higher standard, which is that love tough piece, right? Is that love
Yep.
tough means I'm capable of more. I need to bring it
Yep.
versus I'm beating myself up. What is good enough? What is enough anyway? What does that even mean?
Hmm.
And
Well,
who
and
am
I
I
think
if I don't?
it was also trying to explain that to family. Like,
Mm,
why do you want to go to Florida? Why do you want to help build tiny homes for veterans? Why are you running 5.5 mile? Like, trying to help them understand my why behind it was sometimes a little challenging, because, like, I was trying to figure out the why with this mass fatality. They're
mm,
trying to figure out the why I'm doing what I'm doing and
mm,
what it means to me. And for me to articulate that sometimes. It's really challenging. Like I just need it. And that's the principle. That's it. There's no more, no less. I just have a pull to do it. So I do.
You said earlier that you had some strategies, and you on your Facebook, you talk about being an empowerment and strategic intervention coach. What is strategic intervention, and how might that show up in coaching?
It's tools and strategies that are proven to be able to have you think, get out of a pattern. I think like one of the things that I've been talking about is like consistently being disappointed. Like people are feeling disappointed. Okay, so why are you like that? That means you need to unpack something. And here's some ways to do that. You can put a different meaning to it. You could do this exercise where you ask yourself questions like the why, the 9 whys. That's one of my favorites to do with someone is like, I feel this way. Okay, why? And then, it's usually pretty surfacey to begin with. It was like, okay, so again, why? Like continuing to get to the deep rooted cause of why they're feeling that way. And so it's just figuring out those tools and strategies that work for people. And if it's an accountability person, if it's a goal setting for people, if it's trying to understand what your purpose is or what your why is, like you have done with multiple people. Like there's just strategies out there that people can tap into. And I think people get into this space where they're like, I don't even know where to start. Well, the starting is just Googling something. Like, how is this done? How do people do this? And, people find people. Like I randomly got invited to lead a vision board workshop, which I haven't done in years. But somebody's like, I saw you on the museum wall that you did this 4 years ago. And I was like, holy cow, how did that happen? And it's okay, now I can teach people some skills. I don't hold anything back. I just teach people what I know and what worked for me. And if it works for them, great. And if they can shift it and cater it to their needs and get movement, it's all about movement for people. And I just had this conversation at the vision board, like creativity evokes emotion and emotion evokes motion, like action. So if you can get into this creative space, that's just one strategy. Creativity, and creativity is anything. It's vision boards, writing, it's painting, it's music, it's anything that's getting your creative juices flowing is going to evoke that emotion, which is going to be easier to do some sort of action or motion. So things like that. Strategic intervention is really just kind of the tough love. Like, you want an accountability buddy? I'll be your accountability buddy. You and I
were
were
my original accountability buddy.
That's right.
That's how you and I connected.
Yeah. So I think it's just having that awareness that you need an extra person or an extra skill set or an extra tool in your toolbox. And for me, like breaking a pattern is one of the things. It's like, okay, I'm in this funk and I need to break my pattern. And one of them just so happened, like the other day I was sitting and my heart was doing its thing and I was having anxiety and I actually had a panic attack, which I haven't had in years. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but I knew I had to do something physical to break my pattern. So it was snowing outside. I went outside, no jacket, no shoes on, and stood there for a minute. I was like, oh, it just shocks your system. It's just something that little, just to get out of your head and do something different to move you along.
You're a wonderful human being, Christine Saunders. And we don't talk enough. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. You have made things possible for many, many people, and possibility is the heart of Heartprint. You'll have probably heard me talk about the word Heartprint many times, but ultimately Heartprint is the living legacy that we leave behind in people, the things that we make possible for others. And I just wonder what you believe your Heartprint to be.
I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I've created that yet. I think it's the long haul journey. I think it's being in the moment, not living in the past, but taking the lessons learned from the past and then being able to share that with others. Take your lessons learned in life share them with others that's impactful, and leave them better.
Mm.
That's what it is all about.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit. I'm going to
Mhm.
ask you, what have you seen with your actual eyes that has become possible when you ease people's suffering?
Repeat that one more time.
What have you seen with your eyes, actual evidence, actual examples that you've made possible by easing people's suffering?
Mhm. It's those aha moments, I think, for me.
Mm,
And it's not even in an official capacity of a coach
mhm,
or a leader or any of that sort of stuff, but it's the messages I get from people, or the look in their eyes,
mm,
or the, oh, I didn't even think about that way, or oh my God, let me write that down. Like, it's just, for me, it's any little nugget that somebody can have that makes their life better because of something that I shared with them.
mm,
You can see that. You can see that in an energy shift. You can see that in a body language. You can see that in the eyes. The eyes always tell the truth. And so if I can share what I know and what I've learned, and somebody takes that from me and has that moment of clarity,
mm,
that that for me is like, yes. Like, I get so excited when people are like, oh my God, I'm going to go look this up. I'm going to go research. I'm going to do that. Like, just because I said one thing to them, it gets them to get in this different mindset. And for me, that means that I have made an impact and I have eased
mm,
someone's suffering, little or small.
mm. When are you going to get your radio show back, or some form of creative outlet where the world can experience more Christine Saunders?
I'm not going to do another radio show because that was a lot. I mean, I loved it. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. As far as podcasts go, I thought about getting that up and running again. I think my challenge for myself is, what would the topics be? I think I'm so much into like the disaster and emergency response, first
Hmm.
responders. I'm on a group that's creating a peer support program through our whole entire state for our
Hmm.
emergency managers. And like that is awesome. Like, I want to be able to
Hmm.
have a podcast or something that people in that profession can
Mm,
come on and share how they take care of themselves,
mm,
what happens when you respond and this happens. And
mm,
so I'm kind of in the process of doing that for another entity, so I have to just be pretty careful because we're gonna do some of those interview type things. It's the story. If your story can help someone else, let's do it.
mm. I love that. Love
Hmm.
that. The world definitely needs your heart-centered expression, that's for sure.
Thank you, Ryan.
We're gonna have to wrap up soon, aren't we?
Yeah, I did see on Facebook that Abby had a question that she, and I could look it up, but she had a question and I thought about it. So I'll
Have
let you
you?
ask
Right.
the
Let
question.
me just find it then, and I shall actually ask you're honestly, you're good at this, aren't you? Keeping me accountable.
I actually have it, I think, if you don't.
I do. Hold on 1 second, caller. Where's it disappeared to? Hang on. 3, 2, 1. Yes, here we go.
Yeah.
So Abby says, I understand that all our heart prints are unique, but I'm curious if Chris feels that it's possible for a part or the whole thing to be passed on from one generation to the next. I guess then, therefore, our heart prints are part of our DNA, or are they built from something external? How do you wrap your head around that one?
Yeah, I saw that late last night or early this morning because I was having a little bit of problem sleeping. But um I think it's both, in my honest opinion. And she's very sciencey almost, but I love it. Um, I think it's both because we're all, I believe, we're all born in this pure form, this moment, um, that comes from our mother and our father. and that's part of our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Both of my parents are very much like me.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there is a part of a generational piece, but I also think it's all about the experiences.
Yeah.
And from that small age, no parent is given a book or a manual, right? So they do the best they can to pass on the information that they've gotten.
Yeah.
And then, through the years, it's part of, like, I've always been that person that helps others.
Mm-hmm.
Where I got that, I'm going to guess my dad. I'm guessing because it's
Mm-hmm.
been from a very, very small age, young age. And until, an experience happened in my early 20s, where I kind of shut that piece down for a while. And not that I still wasn't helpful, because I was public service for 30 years, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's both, because I think your experiences drive how you show up
Mm.
and the meanings you put to those experiences.
Yeah. What do I think? Well, I don't know. Sometimes I reject part of my DNA. Sometimes I reject part of that. So maybe I'm just rejecting part of me that's already there. That's for a different conversation. But I believe in this one sentence that we should nurture our nature. So often people talk about, is it nature? Is it nurture? And I think actually when it comes to gifts and skills and talents and having them manifest to their fullest expression, I think that we should first tap into our nature. What is it that we're drawn to? What is it we love to do? What is it that gives us more energy? What is it that excites us? And then to nurture that. And the greatest insight I got to that is I have 2 children, both raised into the same house, completely different interests, completely different skill sets. Like Corey is, sporty, scientific. Brooke is creative performer, and Corey, like me, can't sing. Brooke and Lisa can definitely sing. Whereas Brooke don't give a monkeys about things like maths and school and stuff. So I think actually, rather than me trying to make these 2 kids average at everything, I think Lisa and I are trying to create experiences for them to nurture that seemingly natural talent within them.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it goes back to, when we're young people and we're going through school and decide that we want to have that career. And it's like what we were sort of told from our parents who didn't have a manual: get a job, has good benefits, gonna have insurance. But there never was that passion or that interest like you're talking about. So for me, I found that way later in life than I think this generation is seeing now, because I think there's more emphasis on, what do you love to do? What are you drawn to do?
Yeah.
University, college isn't for everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think if we can tap into our own, like you said, interests, and not put that parameter around ourselves or our kids or our society, I think it would be more successful than trying to put labels on things, if that makes sense.
Where can people connect with you?
Say that one more time.
Where can people connect with you?
Facebook, Christine Saunders. Instagram, Follow Your Whole Heart. And I also have a TikTok, Follow Your Whole Heart.
Yeah.
I do.
Are you active?
I don't do much. Huh?
Are you active on TikTok?
Yes and no. I was very active during the pandemic. I did a lot of content during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then I just thought, this is boring. I was bored, so I didn't do it for a while. And then I've been posting a couple things here and there. But yeah, I love TikTok. It's dangerous.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you lose your time. I was active on TikTok, but we took a break from sharing some of the clips from the podcast. That's the only reason it's up there. And when that gets sorted, my good friend Matt, who does all the videos, will be uploading. I'm sure I've got like 90 clips. Like they're all going to be scheduled. I don't have to post another TikTok for another 3 years.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. And then, email Christine at followyourwholeheart.com would be awesome. I'd love to hear from people.
Love that. I'll add that to the show notes. Make sure you reach out to Chris, let her know how much you've been interested by our conversation, or whether you have any particular questions for her, comments for her. I'm sure she'd love to read that and see that. Chris, thank you so much. Absolutely love your heart. Thank you so much for coming and spending time and allowing me to probe you with my curious questions, and just be honored if you'd leave us with a final thought from your good self.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always an honor to share space with you. I miss it, and I think one little nugget of advice is honor your feelings, sit with them, understand them, and if you need strategies or ideas to sort of work through places where you're stuck, there are people. And so reach out to people, but honor your space and honor you.
Love you, my friend.
Love you too.
Thank you for making it to the end of the interview here on YouTube. I hope that our time spent together has left you a little bit better than before you push play. Before you go anywhere, please leave a comment down below, some of your key reflections, your key takeaways. I love hearing from you and what this conversation has inspired in you. Let me know what you're going to do as a result of this conversation. I will be back next Wednesday, where I will share another inspiring guest. To make sure that you don't miss that, please do subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as soon as it goes live. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organization, please do visit alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com, and it will be my honor and privilege to help you in any way I can. Keep leading, my friends. I've been Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast here on YouTube. Always love.